in this video, I'm going to basically go through with you guys 4 very simple steps that makes up the absolute minimal full skinny to muscular guide for skinny men in this situation. And just to show you that you can trust me with this information and just what I'm going to say, 4 years ago this was me, and this is me now after gaining 26 kilos plus. And if you want more of my personal help, I've got a free community that helps 200 plus guys bulk and gain muscle. So if you want to check that out, it's going to be the top link in the description. But I do not want to bore you because I want to help you. So let's get on with this video. So step number 1 out of 4, right? So this video is basically going to consist of 4 big steps, and I'm going to go over the mini sub steps, all right, in each big step, right? So the first big step out of 4 is your foundations, okay? And if you're a regular watcher of my YouTube channel, then you will know how important I value building your foundations as a beginner to the gym and as someone who doesn't have as much experience. And the reason this is I like to use this analogy of builders building a house, okay? So when builders build a house, they have to build the foundations on the ground first. So when they build the house, it can actually be stable, it can actually stay balanced, it can actually stay upright. However, if they don't build the foundations because they just want to get to where they want to go quick, aka they just want to build the house quickly, get it done with, get their paycheck and move on to the next one, if they don't build the foundation and they build the house, then the house is simply going to crumble. Search up on the internet right now, and I'm going to put a picture on the screen of a house, without a foundation below it. It's just houses falling down, or, a still shot of houses in the process of falling down. And that is exactly what's going to happen if you do not build your foundations. If you skip this foundational layer, and I'm going to go over what the foundations consist of in just a second so you can take a bit of action. If you don't build the foundations, then you're simply going to crumble. No matter how consistent you stay, no matter how long you're going to the gym for, no matter how much you're eating and how right you're eating, if you don't build the foundations, you are not going to get to where you want to be in the long term. You may be fine within a couple of months, however, in a couple of years and years down the line, you are going to find yourself not where you want to be because you didn't take this initial action, okay? So I hope you understand why building the foundations is important now. So building the foundations consists of obviously understanding what's important and what doesn't. Understanding the big misconceptions and understanding what you actually need to prioritize, and obviously getting your baseline stats, okay? And I'm going to go through what these 3 mean. So the first one, basically understanding what's important, so, and obviously understanding the misconceptions that people make. I'm not expecting you to know what's important and the big misconceptions that people make, but I'm helping you do this now, okay? So the biggest thing, in my opinion, that people get mixed up is that they need to, the more they lift, the more muscle they're going to grow. However, that is completely as far from the truth as you can possibly be. Right, that's like being in Australia when you were meant to go to England. You're very far away from the truth. The reason this is because the most important thing when it comes to muscle growth is actually performing the exercise correctly and giving your muscle the stimulation and the tension that is required in order to fatigue it so it can grow. And don't worry, this is a very common misconception to make. I made this misconception. And the reason why lifting as much as you can won't necessarily lead to muscle growth is because of how important form and performing the correct technique is. And the reason why these two don't necessarily go together is because when you're trying to lift as much weight as possible, you don't necessarily think about controlling the bar, or if you're doing bench press, or you don't necessarily think about performing the exercise properly. You just think about moving the weight down and up or up and down in order to complete the rep. So you can say you've moved as much weight as you possibly can and you've moved the maximal amount you possibly can, alright? So what I'm trying to get at here is you don't necessarily want to be going for PBs, and you don't necessarily want to be solely focusing on the weight you're lifting. Obviously, you want to be increasing the weight as you go, as you get stronger. However, you want to be making sure as well, just as important, that you are performing the exercises correctly. So that is a foundation that you must get in place. You must prioritize, like, being aware of how to perform exercises, how things work, all of that stuff. Okay, instead of actually going straight into the gym and doing 1 rep maxes on, your bench press, your squat, your deadlift, actually pay attention on how to perform those. Okay, and you don't necessarily want to get into bad habits when you're further down the line. And that is actually something else about building your foundations. It makes sure you build these good habits, because if you just rush straight into things, for example, if you don't necessarily prioritize form and technique, then you're going to build these bad habits of not performing the form and the technique correctly with you in your gym journey as you go along. And in the long term, because you're not necessarily performing these exercises correctly, you're not going to make as much progress as you would have liked to make, and you could have potentially built an injury up over the long term because you're not necessarily performing the exercises correctly. So that's another reason why building the foundations and putting emphasis on right form and right technique at the start is super, super important. And I'm just trying to remember what I was saying. So misconceptions, learning, um, learning. Oh yeah, baseline stats. Okay, so baseline stats are extremely important, and what I mean by baseline stats is, as you're a skinny guy, you want to take your first scale weight measurement. You want to take your first progress photos. You want to start tracking your lifts and your strength at this time. And there's many reasons why this is important, but you just want to know where you're starting. And the reason why tracking your baseline stats is super important, not just because when you're 5 years down the line with a physique you want, it's really cool to look back at where you started, and it's really cool to show people where you came from. However, if you don't necessarily track statistics and data, how will you know if you've progressed, right? For example, 4 years ago when I started the gym, I weighed 51 kilos. If I didn't track that and I wasn't aware of that, I would have no idea, how much I've gained. And obviously, it'll be a bit obvious in how much I've gained because my appearance and my physique has changed. However, you just want to know these things for the short to medium term. So to emphasize the importance of tracking your baseline stats and getting all of these things in line, I'm going to basically, there's going to be two of you right here, all right? So you number one and you number two, okay? Imagine both of you aren't making progress. However, you number one is tracking everything, tracking your weight every week, tracking your progress in the gym every week, progress photos every few weeks. However, you number two isn't necessarily going to do this. Who is more likely to make progress in the long term? Obviously, it's going to be you number one, because you have these stats, because you have this data, and because you built your baseline stats. You can now see these. You can now see this pattern of data and see, you can think to yourself, nothing's really happening. What am I doing wrong? What can I improve? Am I eating enough food? Am I pushing hard enough in the gym? What do I need to improve? However, you number two is just going to be stuck because you have no data. So you can't necessarily see where you can go wrong. Therefore, you don't know where to improve and, what to prioritize so you can progress. I really hope this makes sense to you, okay? So baseline stats, to sum it up, consists of, if you haven't already, track your first scale weight, right? And you want to do this as soon as you wake up in the morning. The only thing you should do before you step on a scale is go to the toilet, do a number one or a number two if you need to. But apart from that, do that as the very first thing you do in the morning, because you're gonna be depleted of you're gonna be retaining less water, and you're not gonna have food inside you, which is gonna add on to the weight. So weighing yourself in the morning is gonna be the most accurate time to weigh yourself. Take your progress photos, start to track your workouts and see the progress over time. And as I said, this is super, super important going forward, because if you're not necessarily progressing how you'd like to be or how you'd imagined it to be, then, if you're not progressing at all, then you can look at this data and see where you're going wrong, adapt, and therefore overcome and progress, okay? So that is the first big step out of 4. Build your foundations, acquire your baseline stats, which is going to set you up for the long term, and it's going to hold your house up as you slowly build it over time. And in that context, I mean your physique. So now swiftly moving on to step 2 out of 4, if you're a skinny man and you want to gain weight, you want to gain muscle, all of that good stuff. So you obviously need to be eating in a calorie surplus. And if you don't necessarily know what a calorie surplus is, it basically just consists of eating in excess to what your body actually needs day to day. so you gain weight. All right. So for example, every single person has an amount of calories they need to consume every day in order to stay at the same weight, and this is called your maintenance calories. So let's say person X has the maintenance calories every day of 2,000 calories, right? So if person X ate 2,000 calories every single day, he would just stay here. He would stay at 69 kilos. He wouldn't go up to 70. He won't go up to 75. He won't go down to 65. He would just stay at 69 kilos. However, if he ate in a surplus, which is in excess to that, so anywhere between 2,000, 2,250 to 2,500 calories, then he would slowly start to gain weight. And the importance of this is you scientifically cannot gain weight without eating in a calorie surplus. You scientifically can't do it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make biological sense. You have to be in a calorie surplus. In order to acquire your calorie surplus or a rough estimate of your calorie surplus, what I want you to do right now is click on the second top link in the description. It's going to take you to a website. You basically put in a couple of your stats, like your age, your current weight, how much you want, stuff like that, and then it's going to come up with how much you need to eat in order to gain a certain amount of weight per week, or in order to just gain weight in general. Okay, so once you've done that, what you want to do is you want to actually start eating in that calorie surplus. You want to start eating that amount of calories every single day. So if it tells you you need to eat 3,250 calories a day to gain weight, you stop bitching about, you stop being a pussy, and you eat that bloody food. Okay, and if that's not necessarily enough, because people have different metabolic rates, which basically means people burn more calories whether they're doing rest, whether they're at rest or whether they're at activity. If you're not gaining weight still because of that, then you want to increase it again. Okay, and that's something really important that people don't then they're not aware of. They're like, oh, the calorie surplus isn't working for me, because even though the computer told me I've got to eat this and I've been eating in a surplus, I'm still not gaining weight. However, what they don't realize is that different people have different genetics, different people have different metabolic rates, aka they burn more calories. If people have a high metabolic rate, they burn more calories whether they're resting or whether they're doing activity. Therefore, unfortunately, they are disadvantaged in this situation, so they have to eat more food. Okay, so that is something really, really important to realize, and you got to be consistent with this. Okay, you can't just eat in a surplus one day and then take a break the next day and then eat the next day but then take a break. No, you need to be eating in a surplus every single day. Okay, and before I move on to step 3, I just want to give you guys a really, really big tip and a really, really big mindset trick that you guys need to implement in order to make eating in a surplus as easy for you as physically possible. So, I don't know if you've heard it, but in my 4 years of training and bulking, I've heard it a whole lot. Okay, people say you've got to eat big to get big, and to an extent that is correct, because obviously you've got to eat more than what your body needs, so you do have to eat a fair amount of food. However, why would you want to make it hard for yourself by eating as much as possible? Why would you want to eat big amounts of food? Okay, for example, if I put your calorie surplus on 2 plates, right? Like, plate number 1 just has a lot of food, right? However, plate 2 has very little food, but the exact same macros, the exact same protein and everything. What would you do? You'd obviously eat your plate number 2 because it's a lot easier than plate number 1. So don't make it hard for yourself. The point that I'm trying to make here is that you want to think about not eating as much food as possible. You want to think about eating as little food as possible. You want to look at your portions and think, how can I make that even smaller? Or how can I make that even more calorie dense? Okay, and I'll give you guys a really, really good example. So my usual breakfast is what it was, right? 2 bits of toast, 6 eggs, and yeah, that was it, right? And I looked at that plate of food and I thought, how can I make that more, but not more? How can I make that more in terms of calories, but not more in terms of volume? That is the secret. You want to try and make your foods like more in calories, but at the same time keep the volume to an absolute minimum, okay? And I did this through, instead of having 2 bits of bread, I had 2 bagels, and I know that that isn't necessarily keeping the volume the same, because 2 bagels is more volume of food than 2 bits of bread. However, I just 2 extra calories like that, right? And instead of having just eggs, I mix cheese in there, and I mix smoked salmon in there, or I mix the meat in there. And that adds 400, 500 calories with a click of a finger, and it doesn't necessarily add too much volume to the food, therefore keeping it just as easy to eat. So I'm being a lot more effective because I'm consuming 400, 500 calories more, and the volume of the food hasn't really changed. So that's one thing to keep in mind that a lot of people get wrong. So yeah, you want to be, obviously you want to have identified your surplus by now. You want to be staying consistent with your surplus, and you actually want to be not eating big to get big, but eating as little as possible to get big. And obviously, just before I move on, you want to be tracking your calorie surplus. As I said earlier, person number one who actually has data, you know, right? If you're not gaining weight, you look at how much you're eating every day, and then you realize you've been eating in a calorie deficit. That is the power of tracking. And if you didn't track, you wouldn't necessarily know. So make sure you track how much you're eating every single day, and find your own way to make that as easy for yourself as you possibly can. Okay, so that's 2 steps out of 4 ticked off, my friend. So now moving on to the penultimate step, so step 3 out of 4, and that is a workout plan. Okay, a workout plan is super, super important, because you don't necessarily want to just rock up to the gym or go to the gym not having a plan, because in that situation you're going to go on the treadmill because you're thinking about what you're doing for 10 minutes, and then you're going to try a shoulder machine, and then you're going to try a leg machine, and then you may try a back machine, and then because you don't necessarily have any structure and you don't necessarily feel motivated to kill your workout, or you don't have any motivation to better yourself last week because you have no idea what you're doing, you're just going to leave the gym within 20 minutes, all right? So making sure you have a workout program, sticking to a routine, is super important, because without a routine, there's no room for progress, because in order to progress something, you need to do it multiple times over. And if you don't have a routine and you're just going with the flow and you're changing what you're doing, then you simply can't do that, okay? So making sure you have a workout plan is super, super important. Now, if you don't necessarily have a workout plan and you want one, in my free community, I've got a push-pull legs program, which, as you can see on the screen, the guys are using, they're getting results with it, and they're absolutely loving it. And I guarantee you, it will help you progress, okay? But yeah, you just want to have a workout program, you want to have structure, you want to have routine, because if you don't, you're not necessarily going to be motivated to progress. You won't know how to progress or where to progress. You're not really going to be in the right mindset when you go to the gym, which is not good, because if you're not in the right mindset, you're not necessarily going to have a good workout. You're not really going to be focused or zoned in, and you're not going to progress at all if you don't have a workout plan. Okay, and something else that I want to touch on before we go into the final step is recovery. Okay, recovery from your workouts, because most beginners get this twisted, and this is a huge misconception again that beginners make that I forgot to mention earlier. Okay, but this isn't really tied to the first one; it's just tied to this one. So, a huge conception beginners make is that more is more in terms of the gym and in terms of working out. If I go to the gym more every time, if I go to the gym more times a week, I'm going to grow more muscle. However, that is completely further. You're even further from you know you're even further from the truth. All right, you've gone to the islands behind Australia now when you're meant to get to England. You've gone even further from the truth. When you're saying that more is more, because what beginners don't actually realize, and what you as a skinny man may not necessarily realize, is that recovery is when you recover and when you actually give your body the rest it needs. That is actually when you allow your muscles to grow. That is, because without recovery, your muscles cannot grow. Because what happens in really simple terms in the muscle growth process is your muscles, after you've done a workout, imagine, because you've fatigued them, they're like this, right? However, when you recover, they come back bigger and stronger. And if you don't allow them to recover in the first place, then they're just going to stay, you know. So that's the importance of recovery as well. And with your workout program, you want to make sure that you're getting at the absolute minimum 2 days of rest every single week. I used to go to the gym 6, sometimes 7 times a week. Don't do that, you know. Obviously, I completely understand that some people may do that for the mental benefits and just to keep them, you know, sane and all of that good stuff. But I guarantee you, you'll be much better off mentally if you actually give yourself a little bit of rest, okay? So making sure you go to the gym 5 times a week, planning your workout program around that. 5 times a week at the absolute max, by the way. I'd say anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week is, you know, great. That's fine. Less than that, I don't necessarily think that's enough in your situation, and any more of that, that's just way too much, okay? The final step is consistency, okay? Consistency is the thing that is going to bridge the gap for you between you right now and your desired self, your dream physique. Consistency is one of the bridges that you are going to have to construct, therefore you can walk to get to where you want to be, right? You know, there's so many people that are like, they have cycles where they're completely on it with the gym. They're 2 months strict diet, amazing workouts, and then 2 months, and then the next 2 months they're just completely off it, and then they wonder why they're back at square one. It's because they weren't consistent over a prolonged period of time. As I said, consistency is one of the main bridges that you need to construct for yourself so you can walk towards achieving your best self, okay? So that is the final step, and that is now the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. I genuinely hope this has helped you. I'm broken it down for you in the most simple way possible, because that's what we want to do. We don't want to overcomplicate things. We don't want to make things difficult for you, because truly making things as simple as possible, mastering the basics and progressing on that is what is going to get you towards where you want to go, okay? And just before I let you guys go, if you have made it this far in the video, I would absolutely love it if I can invite you to my very own free online community, which I was talking about at the beginning of the video. It's going to be the top link in the description. We are currently helping 200 plus skinny men who are really struggling with weight and really struggling to progress in the gym, to help them do those things in the most efficient way possible. You get personal access to me. I've actually just started doing free one-to-one muscle maximizing growth calls, okay, in the community. So if you want to go and, you know, have a free one-to-one call with me, then all you need to do is just get a few points in the community so you can unlock it, and then we can have a little chat about where you are, what you want to do, where you want to go, and how we're going to get there, okay? So if that sounds good to you, it's going to be the top link in the description. I'm going to be very excited to speak with you. However, if you just want to stay on the YouTube, that's no problem with me. If you enjoyed this video, then it would genuinely mean a lot to me if you could drop a like, maybe a cheeky comment, anything you found good, anything you found bad, it would all help. And I don't necessarily get too many comments, so I'll most certainly reply to you. And if you want to stay around, I upload every single Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Sunday. So yeah, I'll be able to help you, and it'll be an absolute pleasure. Enough of the chit chat, and I will see you next time.